In today's video, we're doing 3 things. 1, an arm workout. 2, a pear steam facial. And 3, making pear juice. Welcome to Low-Sal-Life. I'm Sarah. Today we're making pear juice. And as if canning isn't hard enough, trying to film it, this is gonna be new. What I'm doing today is I have a box of pears that I got kind of off the side of the road at like a little fruit stand. And I paid about $1.50 a pound for them. I have found pears, I'll look for especially overly ripe pears, kind of toward the end of the season. And I can usually find them for about $1, or sometimes I'll ask the farmer if they have some that have ripened too much for sale. They might be able to give you a discount on them, so something to think about. If I drive out to a farm, I can sometimes pay, or orchard, I can pay as low as 80 cents a pound, which was really good. I tried going out to a farm to get some pears. They were $1.50 a pound, but it was a little bit too far out of my way. Like I said, I'm in a rural area, so by the time I went to the city and then went to another rural area, it was just kind of ridiculous. I did notice that at Winco, which is the local grocery store that I shop at, that they had some lost leads at $1.69 a pound for pears. I would have just bought a couple of cases while I was there, but they didn't, they only had like half a box available, so I just, left that. Other times you can find just at your local grocery store, like even the one here in my town, they'll run some lost leads at around $1.29 to $1.50. Some Asian markets are really great to shop at. I used to live in the actual city of Seattle, and I used to shop in, it wasn't Soto, it was kind of like this area between like Central District and Soto. There's kind of this international district down there. I used to get pears there, Asian pears too, probably for about 80 cents to about $1.25 a pound. So there's, don't settle for $2 a pound for fruit. I'm just saying. So today, like I said, I got this box of pears. I wanted to can them like just as pear halves, but I have waited way too long, and so pear juice was my backup plan. I love pear juice, gin and juice. One of my favorites. So since the last time I made pear juice, I have found out I'm salicylate sensitive. So I haven't canned pear juice in 3 years. If you're new here and you're just looking for a pear juice canning recipe, we'll get started pretty soon, but we're gonna do this with extra precautions. So most of my viewers are actually really sensitive to aspirin and natural aspirin compounds called salicylates. They are in almost all fruits and vegetables except peeled pears. So we're going to peel the pears before we make juice, so we're not worried about saving every last little sliver of fruit. The peels are going away. Today I'm going to blanch them because my pears are very, very ripe. They should just come right off. If your child or if you are personally very sensitive to salicylates, you might want to do a thick peel. I'm not going to do that today. I don't really have an issue with any issues. If it's just peeled, I'm usually fine. I do double peel my potatoes, but I don't have an issue with pears. I'm also going to use gloves to protect my hands from any salicylates on the pears. Well, it might not be a big deal if you peel a pear bare-handed. If you do this for an hour, right, you might end up having some contact issues. For those that are new, salicylates can be ingested, absorbed through skin, or inhaled. So we just have to be a little bit more careful how we process them. So I'm going to blanch the pears and peel them. Then I'm going to blend them, and then I'm going to heat them up, bring it to a boil, scoop them into sterilized jars. I'm not straining the pulp. I love the pulp. There's no reason to remove the fiber in this situation. But that's totally an option. You can do that. You just are going to end up with less product. But that might be nice for maybe for kids, like if they're really like squirmy about pulp in juice. And then the last thing we'll do is do them in a water bath canner. Generally, you want to look and see what the recommendations are. I always look at pickyourown.org, pickyourown.org. I always follow their instructions. I was a little bit confused because I didn't see pears listed specifically, but generally fruit juice you want to can in a water bath canner for 5 minutes. Whole pears or probably pear sauce would be 25 minutes. I'm in a higher elevation area, so I'm above a 1,000 foot elevation, below 6,000 feet. So in that case, I'm going to add an extra 5 minutes. So I'm going to water bath my pears for 10 minutes. And I think that's it. We're not going to put anything wild and crazy in here. So if we're not going to put any cinnamon or nutmeg, anything fancy like that, we're going to keep this really simple. No sugar. The pears are so sweet. I'm using a Bartlett pear. They're so sweet, I'm not going to add sugar, but you can add some sugar. Sometimes it adds like a little bit of stability for the fruit, kind of keeps it a little bit nicer looking, so that's an option. But for sweetness, I don't think it's needed. And then I'm also going to add a little bit of ascorbic acid. So lemon juice used to be low in salicylates, but it's been retested several times as much higher. So we're just going to stick with ascorbic acid, citric acid. This is just a normal canning one by Ball. And so I don't have issues with this. I do know that some people with salicylate sensitivity are sensitive to citric acid. You can leave it out. Your pear juice might turn a little on the brown side. Still should be delicious though. Okay, I'm gonna go over just a couple of materials, and I got a new mug. Life is better in a petticoat. For all you girly girls out there, I'm just saying. This is the life of containers with hot water. It's just so ridiculous. So back here I've got my water bath canner. So you need to have a pot of water that is deep enough to hold some mason jars. So this one here that I have holds 7 quarts. Then I'm going to have, in order to blanch my pears, I'm going to have a large pot of water that will be boiling. Then I'm also going to drop those into a cool water bath. I never have ice, so I just run cold water through my sink, and so that's how I end up blanching them. So that's another pot of water that you're gonna bowl of water you're gonna need. Then you also need a small pot of water that you're gonna bring this one just to a simmer. You don't want to boil it, but basically that's for the lids. Then I have a tea kettle that has boiling water on reserve just in case my water bath canner is not full enough. And then I also need a blender for what I'm gonna do. You don't need a blender. A stick blender in a pot would be fine, but even a masher, like a potato masher, should be fine. But I have a blender, so I'm gonna use that. I can add a little tiny bit of water to it too, just to get the right consistency. And so yeah, I think that's it for containers. The last thing that you'll need are just some basic kitchen tools, like a knife, maybe a peeler, a jar funnel, and a jar lifter. Those are both very important. You don't want to handle hot stuff that will burn you if you don't have the right tools. And then I also have a ladle, and then I've got this like other slotted spoon so I can pull, and that's for the blanching part. Then I also have some really thick towels to set the canned jars on after I'm done. So I like to call this area, the cookie sheet, kind of my sterile space. So all of my tools here have all been cleaned. They haven't been used for anything, and they never touch the countertop or anything. And so I use the tongs to pull both the lids out of the simmering hot water, and then also to pull the jars out of the oven. I kind of tip them over and then put them inside and then pull them out. And then the towel is also used. I use that to wipe the rim of the jar before I put the lid on. So that's what all those tools are. I think that's everything. Oh yeah, and of course the lids. For the lids, I'm using quart jars. I prefer the narrow mouth to do juice. And then I also have these rings, and then the lids. So these can be reused, but it is generally recommended that you use brand new lids. So I have only like rinsed these in soap and water just to get any dust or crap off that would be from manufacturing. So I have not ran these through the dishwasher. I want to keep them. What you want is to make sure that this gummy part stays intact. And so that's the reason why you don't put it under a lot of heat. I am going to put them in a pot of water right now. And basically that will keep them hot. And then also it helps soften that gummy stuff so that canning is a lot easier. And I think that's all of the tools that we're going to use. The first two steps I'm going to do is just prep. And the first one is to preheat my oven at 200 degrees. I do this so I can take my washed jars. I ran a load of dishes. Actually, my husband did, but because I don't do dishes very much. So take the jars, they're not hot. If you can time it out just right, where you run your dishwasher cycle and you can run the sanitized load, that's ideal. That way you're taking out hot, sanitized jars out of your dishwasher. I can never coordinate that just right. So what I like to do is just wash the jars in the dishwasher whenever I'm ready to start canning. Then I turn the oven on at 200 degrees Fahrenheit and I place them in there. That will sterilize them and also keep them very hot. So I'm gonna do that. They'll probably be there for about 20 minutes to an hour by the time I'm done peeling and blending the pears and getting them ready before I'm ready to can. The second thing I do, and it depends on your stove, this stove is amazing that I have. It's got a really large, like you have the small, the large, it has an extra large burner, which makes it so easy. It heats it up so fast. But sometimes it will take, like if I've done it at my old house or at my mom's house, it will take about an hour for a canner, the amount of water in the canner to warm up. So I fill the canner up about 2/3 of the way. Remember, you're gonna put about 5 to 7 quarts. I don't know how many I'm gonna get. I bet you I only have like 4 or 5 quarts today. But you never know. So you wanna make sure that by the time you put the quarts of water in to a boiling bath, that you are going to, first of all, have enough to cover the jars, but not have so much that you can't put any jars in because you put too much water in. So just kind of think about that, and that's why we always keep an extra kettle with hot water so that we have that available. And I'm gonna have it and core the pears first. Then I'm also, like, I've got a few that have some like moldy or super bruised spots, so I'm gonna just kind of core those out, and then we'll be dealing with just a half a pear that needs the peel to be taken off. So I'm gonna start with this lovely bucket. I'm gonna put a little bit of ascorbic acid, probably like a tablespoon of cool water, throw that in there, and so that's what I'll start with. So I'm running a little low on ascorbic acid, so I'm only gonna put a teaspoon in for this, and this bucket's probably about 4 inches full, but I don't wanna run out. I wanna make sure I have enough for the actual jars, so that's what we'll do with that. I am all done coring the pears. Since I last talked to you, the canner has boiled. I turned it off, but it'll hold its heat. The other pot of water is boiling as well, and so now we're gonna blanch. Also, since I saw you last, I spilled my coffee, so I am going to make some more. So just so you guys know, I believe I bought 25 pounds of pears. They were about $1.50, so I ended up in the $35–40 range when I bought them. Just so you know, that's this size box, and it was filled up to about half full, maybe a little bit 2/3 full. So it didn't look very full when I started. So I believe that that should be enough for what we're going for. This here is 8 quarts. This is one of my favorite containers to can with. It really gives me a good idea of how many how many quart jars I need. So by the time we peel these and blend them up, I'm expecting it to be in the 7–8 quart range. If I have some extras, I'll just drink the juice today. But that's I think we're going to end up with 7 quarts, which is pretty good. I wasn't sure if we'd end up with that much. So. Okay, so the process for doing the blanching is I've got a large pot of boiling water. Normally you would want to boil the pears for like 30 seconds, maybe a minute, then bring it and drop it into an ice water bath. I don't have ice here, like we're just not ice people. I think I probably have 3 cubes in the freezer right now. I'm not gonna go buy any. And I'm not worried about the firmness of the fruit, right, because I'm making juice. So what I'm gonna do is I've just got a large bowl. I'm gonna keep it under running water so that it stays cold. And then after I'm done peeling the pear peel, I cannot say that. After I'm done taking that off, then I will put it into the blender where I can load up the blender. Then I will add just a little bit of water, like maybe a half cup, just so there's about 1 inch of water at the bottom, and blend it and throw it into my big 8 quart thingamabobber. After the peel came off, there was just a little bit of yellow residue right under the peel. So I was able to either use my finger to rub it off, or I used just a little bit of the edge of I didn't have to don't put very much pressure on it, just a little tiny bit, just to scrape that color off. Once it looked white, then I knew that the peel was completely gone. So that's what I did there. I'm going to add, this is optional, I recommend it. I'm just going to add 1 teaspoon of ascorbic acid to each blender. Maybe I should do a little bit more, maybe 1½ teaspoons. There's not really anywhere for me to find like a recipe or anything, so we'll do 1½. I think that should be enough. And now I'm gonna blend it. If you look closely, you can tell that there's some water in there. I didn't put any extra water, so this is just from the blanching process or from the pears just kind of draining off. So if you don't have any fluid in there, add just a little bit of water just to make it so that you can blend your pears a little bit better. And I don't have another pot, so you can just put it in another pot because we're going to end up heating it up. But I don't, so because I'm currently using it for blanching. So I'm just going to put it in this container. And I'll just keep doing that until it's full. So over here, I'm gonna just poke my head in here. This here was where I was blanching, but I'm gonna empty it, and this is where I'm going to heat the juice up. I need the juice basically to a boil when I can it, because you want it really hot. So I'm gonna empty this, pour all that juice in here. If you had another pot, you could just get rid of this one, start warming up your pot. Back here I've got my lids. And then I've got my canner. It was boiling. It's just right off the boil, so I'm going to get that heated up to a rolling boil now. So that shouldn't take very long now, since it was just boiling. And then I still have my jars in the oven. Those are all ready to go. And I put 7 in there, so I should have 1 extra. Just wanted to say that I like using a flat edged spoon so that my stuff doesn't burn to the bottom. What's gonna happen is it's gonna boil, and you're gonna think you're really close to a boil, but you can touch like the edges and it's still cold. So parts of it will heat up faster than others. So you wanna bring it to basically a rolling boil where no matter if you're stirring, it's still boiling no matter what. So that's your goal. And in the meantime, we're gonna, it's already going. You can see I'm pulling one jar out at a time from the oven. It's nice and hot. I'm using my tongs. Then I'm filling it up, ladling it in. Again, like I mentioned, it's arm day, so ladling in the juice. I want to fill it up about 1/4 inch from the very top. You can kind of gauge between like the lower thread and the base of the lid area. That's a really good place to gauge. My juice is a little bit foamy, so I'm gonna kind of hit more of that 1/4 inch gauge area and then plan on it kind of just decreasing a little bit because I've got a lot of air in my juice. Then I use a clean, wet rag, damp rag to take off any juice that might have spilled on the edge. This here just kind of takes up any sugar that might be on the edge that might prevent you from getting a good seal on it. Next, I'm putting on one lid and the lid ring, and I'm using the tongs because it's been sitting in hot water for quite some time. So I just jarred these up. I am now going to put them in the water bath, and basically I've got my big old canner. It's boiling. I decided I am going to keep this is really hot. Just because they're on the counter doesn't mean they're not hot. So I'm leaving one celebratory jar of pear juice. My husband and I are gonna have a Saturday beverage together. Saturday afternoon beverage. It's not even nighttime yet. So, and then I'm gonna can these. So what I ended up doing, because of the water level in the canner, I dropped in, normally it fits 7. So I had already put in 1 quart to compensate for that volume that won't be there. And then now I'm taking 1 jar away as well. So I put 2 quarts of water into the canner, so it should be a little bit closer to being full. So now I am going to run these through the canner. Fruit juice needs to be at a rolling boil in the canner for 5 minutes. I'm above the 1000 elevation level, so they recommend an extra 5 minutes. So I am going to do 10 minutes total. Whew, it's getting warm. Here you can see me lowering it into the canner. And now I'm going to wait 10 minutes until it's done, and then I'm going to pull it out and set it on the towel. So my water is hot. Normally what happens is I don't have, it's just not hot enough. So what I'll do is I'll put the lid on, wait for it to come back up to a rolling boil, and then start my 10-minute timer from that. But this is pretty fierce boil. So I'm not going to put the lid back on. I dropped the heat down 1 notch for me because I just don't want the jars rattling around like crazy in there and break, right? And so just something to think about. 10 minutes. All right, that's it. We're done. Just pull them out of the canner, set it on I've got a couple towel, like 1 towel folded up into thirds, so it's 3 layers of towels here. And what you're gonna do is just let them sit. You'll hear them pop, which means that they're closing basically. It's at an expanded state right now. As it cools, cool things condense. So when that air and that heat condenses, then it's going to suck the top of the lid down into the jar, basically, and it will make a really good seal. You can leave the jar, like these are really hot. Some people do unscrew these. I'm gonna wait about an hour or two before I unscrew the lids. Some people say if there's water trapped in there that they'll get rusty, but I think, first of all, I've got a ton of these. So if they get rusty, I don't really care. The rust doesn't really affect canning anyway. So I'll try and unscrew these in about an hour or two when they cool down a little bit more. You just want it a little bit loose. So then tomorrow I will, label them, put them away. Here's my canning. I told you I wasn't joking about the peaches. These are for me. I'm gonna try and find a couple more cases of pears over the next week or two and see what else I can finish up. And next week I will post a video on how to make besides salicylates, I don't know if I can actually really eat apples. I've had a lot of reactions to apples, but most of them have been in juice, or if there's like peel with it, or if they were dried. So someday I'll experiment with apples, but right now we're about 7 years of no touching apples. For whatever reason, I am not allergic to them, but they make me vomit. So I am looking forward to, I'm gonna make a caramel pear cider next video, and then also show you how I serve up my gin and juice hot, kind of like a hot toddy. And yeah, we'll see you next week. Thanks for joining me. I hope you learned a lot and you feel motivated to go and take back Pear Juice, take back some control over your food and how you prepare it. So see you next week. Bye.